Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to our next tier list. This was our companion tier list to the last one, to our Clone Wars rankings here. Before we do so, make sure you're liking the video. If you're new, subscribe to our channel. We do tier list once a month, if not more. You should subscribe to the channel. We also make our tier list extremely comprehensive. Like this won't be like any other tier list you find out there on YouTube. Let's just dive into the tier list because this is going to be a longer one. Rebels had a lot less characters. Clone Wars has a ton. We are also on this list. It's not going to only be Clone Wars, but kind of everything that is in the Clone Wars animation style. So we are also including some characters from Tales of the Jedi and the Bad Batch as well. We're going to start out here with a fan favorite for sure, Hondo Onaka. Hondo Onaka is one of my favorites in Clone Wars. He's menacing while also being extremely funny. I would say he's an A tier for me.
Yeah, he's a very memeable character, like such iconic quotes and everything. Not many people can hold Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Count Dooku hostage. So, he's great. S tier easily for me.
S tier. Okay.
Yeah, I love this guy.
I'm happy with him in S tier. I'd said it A tier, but I'd love him in S tier.
Moving on, we have Crosshair. Crosshair is incredible as a character, especially season two of the Bad Batch. He has really come into his own. That one episode on the snow planet, it's savage, it's devastating. He's fascinating character, and then where he's left off at Tantus, yeah, I'd say easily an A character.
Crosshair is an A tier as well. I think he could rise up in that S tier. We haven't seen the full breadth of his story yet, but Crosshair is probably the standout character from the Bad Batch. Next is Echo. Echo is another fascinating character, a character who has a lot of growth in the earlier part of the Clone Wars, comes back in season 7, then is a mainstay in the Bad Batch, a character who got quite a bit of character development in Bad Batch season 2, more so than maybe he ever got in the Clone Wars itself. He has a little less signifying his personality than he does with his design. I would say he borders on A tier for me because of how iconic he is. I'm happy with B tier.
Yeah, I would say that Echo is firmly B tier for me. Fascinating how that torture and everything and how he deals with that, but also how he starts using his new body, just like, embracing and accepting it. I want more from him, more of like his own expertise instead of just feeling like, okay, him and Tech are just 1A, 1B if they have to solve something. Yeah, I'd put him B. Next up is another one of my favorites, and it is 99. Tragic, tragic story, being a deformed clone and everything. The episodes that he does have with Domino Squad, what he does to sacrifice himself for his brothers. He truly becomes a trooper, if not the greatest trooper of all, right? Just willing to do anything. I almost want to say A tier, but he has a very minor role. It's more of the significance and then Bad Batch being named after him. I'd say B behind Echo.
I was gonna say A tier for 99. His impact as a character that only exists in a singular arc, his impact is one of the greatest out of any of the Clone Wars characters. An A tier for me.
Easily accept that.
Next is Pong Krell, one of the best villains in the entirety of the Clone Wars. I really love the Pong Krell arc. Pong Krell is menacing. His two double-bladed lightsabers are so iconic. Even though he's only in one arc, I think he's a villain that makes a huge stamp, as 99 does for the hero side. I would say he's an A tier as well.
Yeah, I'd easily say A tier as well. Fives is my favorite clone, bar none, but he is the reason why Fives really becomes who he is. Even though he goes out in a little bit of a whimper, it's so thematically strong that, yeah, it's unforgettable villain. Next up, we have Barriss Offee. Barriss is an interesting character because I think if you look at just her Clone Wars depiction in the show, being like a friend to Ahsoka, how they both worked easily more together than like Illuminara and Anakin ever did. Her turn never really worked for me. I think we need like a book or like a Tales of the Jedi episode or something to fill it in. Is a bit of a weaker character for me. I would honestly say C tier.
I was going to say B tier for Barriss. The story did work for me. I thought the twist was absolutely shocking. In my head, she was always a bigger character, but she's really only a part of two arcs in Clone Wars, so I think for me that would drop her to B.
Sure, yeah, bottom of B works for me.
Next is Duchess Satine Kryze. Duchess Satine Kryze, one of the more interesting Mandalorians we've ever seen in Star Wars. A pacifist, somebody who's completely trying to change the image and culture of Mandalore, and also Obi-Wan's love interest. Satine has a great, very complete arc in the Clone Wars, which I think adds a lot to her character. I would say she's an A tier character.
Yeah, I don't mind where we put her. She is definitely an A tier character for me, being Obi-Wan's one-time lover and a tragic end, with that reconnection with Mandalore being forced into Imperial but First Republic control because of Maul and all that, Shadow Collective. She's both of a martyr and a lesson. I want to see more of her impact. Yeah, easy A tier. Next up is Darth Maul. S tier. I mean, this man should not have worked as a character after being chopped off in half. The way he pulled himself up is fascinating and easy S tier.
Absolutely agree. S tier. Maul is the best villain of the Clone Wars, but also one of the most intriguing characters. His entire arc, his rise, his fall, his rise again, the way you can never put Maul down. Next is Hunter. Hunter is introduced in the Clone Wars season 7, then continues as one of the main characters of the Bad Batch, the kind of father figure of the Bad Batch. He's the team leader. Hunter has some layers that we get to really explore with Crosshair as kind of his mirror character in season 1. He might not be an A tier character yet, but he's close for me. I'm happy with either top of B, I think he's above Echo, or bottom of A.
I would say top would be. I loved a lot of what happened in that first season of The Bad Batch for me, but like you said, he's so reluctant, and I understand the story reasons behind that, but he kind of almost feels like he loses his voice a lot in season 2. He's kind of lost in some of these episodes. He's missing a little bit of like what makes him that leader again of The Bad Batch. Next up, we have Pre Vizsla. He is our introduction to the dark saber, fights Kenobi, fights Maul, has a very honorable death. He comes off as a guy very pompous and like, okay, I'm just all here for looks, but he grows into this like deranged villain. I want to say like bottom of A.
I would say A tier for sure. Pre Vizsla is one of the more unique characters in Star Wars The Clone Wars, and the Mandalorian arc is one of the more consistently good throughout the entire show. Very underrated lightsaber duel as well with him and Maul. Next is Tech. Tech is the brains of the Bad Batch, a character that for sure after season 1 I probably would have said is a C tier, bottom of B tier character. Great character development in season 2. I'd say Tech is a B tier character as well. I don't know if I can quite put him ahead of Hunter yet.
Yeah, I would say he's ahead of Echo, and it's surprising because ultimately he doesn't really have a lot going on. It's more of how he emotionally grows this season with that episode with Omega that really kind of kickstarts him as a character. But for now, yeah, he's like just ahead of Echo. Next up, we have Embo, who was introduced alongside many of the bounty hunters that started off a lot of the underworld stuff, season 2 onwards of the Clone Wars. More style than substance. I like him quite a bit. I love his fighting style. I love Cuzo's, and for the most part, I don't. He's like an honorable bounty hunter. I can say that. I would maybe say C tier.
Oh, no, I gotta go B at least. He's one of the coolest bounty hunters introduced. Silent Ronin type. I love this character. I love his like shield hat. Like it's such a great character in my opinion. Yeah, he doesn't have much to him. He doesn't really say anything. He's iconic, and I think out of the bounty hunters introduced in the Clone Wars, it's Cad Bane, and then it's Embo. And to me, I think we need him at least B.
Okay, I mean we can put him in B. I'd say I'd argue for lower.
Next is Wrecker, the next member of the Bad Batch. Wrecker is, of course, the Brawn, and a character that is more endearing than actually one that I think will ever get significant growth and character development. Some really strong episodes, though, especially his relationship with Omega playing off into his chip activating with Order 66. I'd still put him in B tier, maybe right behind Echo.
Yeah, I mean, I almost want to put him as C, but I love the sweet relationship that he has with Omega. I think that kind of keeps it. So, bottom of B. Next up, we have Cham Syndulla. His importance in Rebels feels like almost the same as like Lords of the Sith, and maybe a little bit more in the Clone Wars. He has the Ryloth arc, which is very important. Makes so many hard choices. He isn't someone that is truly that likable, but over his appearances and then his further appearance in the Bad Batch, you understand so much what he's doing. He's so loving and caring. He's a fascinating character. I really do like him, so I would put him somewhere in B.
I agree, B tier. Cham doesn't have as much representation in the Clone Wars as you feel like he does. He is prominent in season 1, and then he is in the Bad Batch, but you don't get too much of him. I think that does drop him out of that A tier for me, even though he does make a great appearance in his episode that he does get. Next up is Gregor, and he turns out to be the first Republic commando that we really get under the helmet of in Star Wars canon and in Star Wars The Clone Wars as well, based on his appearances in The Bad Batch as well. I could see him rising up to B.
I actually like him quite a bit. I would put him bottom of B. I think firmly there for sure. Being a commando, I think gives him a couple extra points. He's got great armor with like all the kills. But I think I really like his Bad Batch characterization. I like that he's getting a little crazier. I like that situation quite literally messed with his head and all that. Yeah, bottom of B. I like him quite a bit. I think he's got a lot of room to grow too. Next up, we have the father, one of the three Mortis gods. He's a really cool concept, but compared to like the experiences that we saw with the son, and even some of the moments with the daughter, he's more of like a forewarning. He's not truly a character to me, but he's so important to the galaxy. That's the thing. So B, somewhere in B.
I think I would say B as well for the father. He does leave the least impact of the three, even though he's the most powerful. He's so stoic, you don't really get too much under his skin. So I would say B as well. Next is Commander Cody. Cody has a lot of appearances in the Clone Wars, as well as one great, very significant appearance in the Bad Batch. I can't wait to see him come back. He is Obi-Wan's clone. Obi-Wan's my favorite Star Wars character, so I do have an affinity for him. He's also one of the first clones to get a name and an appearance in one of the Star Wars movies. But I would still fight hard for a B for Cody. I think his Bad Batch appearance alone is one of the best things that's happened to the character in his entire history.
Yeah, I think until the Bad Batch, I think he was firmly C for me. He's got a lot of appearances, but he's kind of just the prototypical clean cut clone for Obi-Wan. He's got great armor. I like his design, but as a clone, he always felt like, yeah, bro, I'm there with you. I'm always like here to help out a clone who's gonna do something even crazier, right? Next up we have Omega, and Omega is like our star character of the Bad Batch. I like a lot of her season one stuff. I like her growth, especially. It's very subtle, but I like a lot of that development in season two. For now, she's like a low B for me. I think she's just sometimes a little too childish, especially for this Clone Wars eras of show.
I do like Omega. I think she's a character that gets unfairly maligned, especially because she is the character in an animated show that's kind of meant more for the kids. I would say she's a B, though. I'd put her at the bottom of B. After that, we move on to the daughter. The daughter is the light side embodiment of the Force, but her conflict with her brother definitely is kind of the crux of the Mortis arc. It's something that makes her journey and ultimately her death and sacrifice of giving up her life to save her father and then giving up her spirit to save Ahsoka is something that has ramifications on the Star Wars galaxy forever. We're seeing him play out in Ahsoka now. Top of B tier character.
Yeah, I'll admit, I think she's just so ethereal at times that it's like hard to really pin down her character, her legacy, or her being like embedded into Ahsoka and giving her life and all that. Her importance is too hard to ignore. Yeah, top of B. I'm fine with that. Next up, we have Huyang. Huyang was introduced in the Ilum arc and all that, and I like him. I think his design's unique. In the show itself, it's just a cool thing. I'd argue for C.
Again, this is another one that I feel more comfortable putting in B. I agree. He's only in one arc, and he is more of a cool lore bit than a character, but I think he leaves a mark. He's another one of those characters that when you in that arc, you mostly think about Hu Yang. Bottom of B is somewhere I'm fine with, but I think he's got to be in B. Next up, we have Fives, and Fives is one of the elite clones of the entire show. Has the most dramatic arc and saddest death of any clone. Easily one of the more important characters to ever be in Star Wars, and especially amongst the Clone Wars. I gotta give him an S tier as well. I would put him behind Maul, but I would put him ahead of Hondo.
Such a dramatic arc. It still feels too soon that he's gone, but it's been 9 years since he died, right? So having his legacy, I hope that he gets referenced one day if like clones are back in like the New Republic conflict. Next up, we have Cad Bane. Cad Bane is very interesting for me because I think he's got some incredible scenes, incredible Western inspired character. Having him be the number two to Django, I would say either top of A or bottom of S because he's got some great arcs. Yes, absolutely. Assassinations, going undercover Kenobi going undercover and with him in the box and all that. I think just on what he's achieved in the Clone Wars, bottom of S, I'd say he's so impactful.
I am happy you said that because I was thinking I was going to have to fight for S tier for Cad Bane, but he's my favorite bounty hunter in this show. Probably my favorite bounty hunter of all time. And I just love this character to death. I think he's so cool. Villain characters, you often rely on their appearance, their style, their swagger. Cad Bane's got all of it in spades. Definitely an S tier for me. Next up, we have Asajj Ventress. Asajj Ventress has a great arc in this show. Maybe not a duel as awesome as her 2003 Clone Wars appearance. This is a character that goes through a lot. And if you wanted to include Dark Disciple as part of the Clone Wars, considering it was supposed to be Clone Wars episodes, maybe we could let that slide. I think this is a character who also belongs in the bottom of S. I would even say above Hondo.
Yeah, I mean, easy S tier because she is just one of those acolytes that's just thrown out there. But it's when she gets abandoned by Dooku that's when she really becomes a character. I know, like you said, we're missing that duel, but we got to see her as a bounty hunter. We got to see her, help out the Jedi as like an anti-hero. And next up, we have Aayla Secura C tier. I'm gonna fight on this one because she's got no significance in her appearances. She's there for the Seventh Samurai like inspired stand in season one. I think she's always got a little bit of the short end of the stick, and she just doesn't get much. I'm gonna fight on C for this, just because I think she's cool, but not much else.
You don't have to fight. I would say it's C tier as well because she's only in, I believe, one arc of the entire show. I think that was really disappointing as well because of her prominence in the Republic comics. The next we have Adigalia, who again doesn't play a huge role in the Clone Wars. I would say Adigalia is also C.
Yeah, I agree. I think I can't ever forget how she's killed, like Savage just ramming her with his horns on his head. That is a brutal way to die. Next up, we have Admiral Trench, known for being a very smart spider guy who refuses to die. That's really who he is. I wish I could say more about him because he has this status. Bottom of B or top of C. That's where I'd put him.
Yeah, I was gonna go bottom of B2. He doesn't have really any appearances. He has like two appearances in the whole show, but he's so iconic. Next is Almec. Almec is the Mandalorian with a super long neck. He's all right, but I think C tier.
Yeah, I think he's C tier too. I like his armor that he has, when he's eventually confronted by Bo-Katan and everyone. We have Anakin Skywalker, S tier. He is the star of the show. I love that we actually got to see so many reasons for why his distrust of the Jedi happened, his issues with Padme. I also love seeing him just be the hero with no fear. That's the biggest thing this show did better for me than even 2003 Clone Wars. So easy S tier, maybe the best character in the whole show.
Yeah, I agree. Top of S tier. Anakin, this is his show. I think that was the whole point of Clone Wars, honestly, in general, was to flesh out and continue to push Anakin closer and closer to bridge that gap between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith Anakins. Matt Lanter's performance is fantastic. I genuinely think of it as a 1A, 1B with Hayden and Matt Lanter. They seem so similar to me now in my mind, especially post Ahsoka. Next is Aura Singh. Aura Singh, one of the star bounty hunters and for sure a massive standout in the early seasons. Unfortunately, we don't really ever see her again. Aura Singh deserves at least a B tier because she is so impactful and very, very cool.
For me, she feels very strongly B, and she could have become an A tier character because of her dynamic with the other bounty hunters. Was a mother figure to Boba, but then like kind of twisted and used it against him, made him choose like kill these people or don't. Like, yeah, I'd say maybe behind Echo, AZI3. AZ's fun. He's neurotic. He's silly, but he's got such a cool Kaminoan inspired design that, yeah, I say B tier. I hope to see him again. I love this man.
Yeah, Easy is pretty awesome. Good B tier character, a droid with the heart of gold. Next up is Bail Organa. Bail Organa has a lot of appearances in the Clone Wars. Actually, a pretty standout character, honestly. And as for legacy characters that gets development, I'd say he's top of B, bottom of A. He has some good arcs. Not too many by himself, though. He's usually supplementary to Padme or some of the other senators.
Yeah, I'd say we're on top of B. We finally get how Obi-Wan did serve him at least once during the Clone Wars. Next up, we have Bo-Katan. She is so anti-hero. She's so villainous, and like she's very distraught about her sister, even though she's the reason a lot of this war is happening. She definitely amplified Pre Vizsla by joining him and his side. I want to say A tier.
I agree. A tier. I would put her at the very top of A tier. She's always stood out a bit more than her actual appearances are, but I think leaves a huge mark and then carrying over into the future. Next, we have Boba Fett. Boba Fett, another character, kind of like Orsing. I wanted to see more of him in the show, especially with how prominent he is in season two. I mean, his arc is the finale. I did love all of the appearances for him, but I think I have to say he's a B tier.
I think for me, what hurt more is that after we see this whole Tatooine crew, the whole train heist and everything, that's it. Somewhere mid B. I really did like what we got here. Next up, we have Boyle. Cool character, cool mustache, but I don't really think about him too much past that. I'd say C.
Boyle is a C tier clone. Started out strong, but doesn't have too much to him. Next is Bosk. Bosk, again, like Aura Singh and Boba Fett, doesn't carry as much weight in the show as we thought he would after season two. I would have preferred to see more of him. I think his appearances warrant a bottom of B.
I don't know if we really know Bosk's age too, so I'm assuming the Clone Wars era is more of his prime. Like he's already established, he's already around Boba and all that. He's a bottom of B. Next up, we have C21 Heisinger. Very cool design. I almost want to say D, but he looks so cool. I'll say C.
Yeah, I would say top of C, even though he doesn't have much of a character. He's awesome. It's another one of those villain characters that is just so cool. Next is C3PO, who gets a surprisingly large amount of story in the Clone Wars. George Lucas loves to continue to go back to 3PO and R2D2 in this show. And 3PO has some great standout moments. I'm okay with top of B because he does have enough appearances that I would argue for A. I just don't know if all of those appearances are necessarily the best of the Clone Wars. They are some of the weaker arcs.
Yeah, 3PO is a reminder of early Clone Wars to me. Like they try to stick in a lot of people that we remember and know about, but don't really make the best use of quite yet. And he's used mostly for comedic relief. All right, next up we have Savage Opress, and Savage is fascinating. I love how he's transformed by Night Sister magic. I wanted him to grow a little bit more past from this like monster. He doesn't get to. I think Maul in some ways stilts his development because he forces that I am the master. We're not just brothers to equals together. I still think he's great though, so I'd put him like bottom of A.
I would put him in A tier as well. I think right behind Satine for me. He's a character that's extremely valuable, not just for Maul's journey, but Ventress's journey as well. Part of one of the best lightsaber duels in the entire show with Sidious. Savage is one of the characters that I think about and remember the most from the Clone Wars. Next is Senator Chuchi. Chuchi has a pretty decent role in the Clone Wars, but is now a major part of the Bad Batch. I always liked the Trespass episode in season one. That was one of my favorite kind of standalone episodes from season one. Don't remember her too much in her appearances in Clone Wars, but her Bad Batch appearance is great enough.
I would argue for like somewhere mid B. I really like her a lot. I like when senators get to really flex their looks too. She's got such great fashion, and she's a young senator. I think that is something that we don't really consider too often. She's like a kid, but she kind of supersedes her own people. Next up, we have Sid. I'd say for me, bottom of C, somewhere around there. I don't love her as a character, but I like her role.
Yeah, I agree. She serves the role she's given. Bottom of C as well. Next, we have Dooku. Dooku was already a great character from the Clone Wars, but Tales of the Jedi has cemented him one of the best characters in Star Wars animation. I gotta put Dooku in S tier. I think he is a character that was close to S tier before Tales of the Jedi. Now that we have his pretty much his entire fall right behind Maul.
I will say behind fives. I think his impact in the Clone Wars for me, as good as a character as he is, for a character who just has so many appearances, just kind of undermining Palpatine, but also like working with Palpatine and then being the public face, kind of hoping for more politicking from him. He just kind of comes out as more of like a dark warrior after the Clone Wars film.
Okay, I'm okay with that. I do think Dooku is a broader, more well-rounded character over the course of like basically we saw his entire life in the Clone Wars and Tales of the Jedi.
Next up, we have Cut Lawquane. He's the first person to really help Rex understand that he's not just a member of an army, he is a person. I'd say bottom of B.
Agree. Very effective. Next is Emperor Sheev Palpatine, or I guess in this show. Chancellor Palpatine. Darth Sidious Palpatine. I love this character so much. He's one of my favorite Star Wars characters of all time. Good appearances, great appearances, but for the most part, he is a kind of a backdrop character. I think he has to have at least an A.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because he has to play the Phantom Menace role of sorts still throughout the show. I wish we got a little bit more with him and Anakin. You're no longer my apprentice. Like, that's such a chilling line, right? So yeah, I'm fine with somewhere in A. Next up, we have Dogma. Dogma is teacher's pet to Ponkrell. Ultimately, realized just how little Ponkrell values them. Right? Very effective in his role. Very annoying about things. Like his name is literally Dogma. I would say bottom of B just because his impact in that arc.
Yeah, what an incredible arc for Dogma. And he is one of the unlikely heroes at the end of it, one of the clones with a more complete arc, even if it is really only one arc in the show. Next is Amiri Carr. This is Omega's kind of sister. We don't know much about this character yet, so she's included. Next, if we did this tier list again, she'd probably be higher up because season 3 is definitely going to be diving heavily into this character. For now, yeah, probably a C tier.
Cool in a way. Like her reveal is very shocking and surprising, being another clone. I'm very curious what her ultimate role is here. So right now, bottom of C. We just don't know anything about her. Next up, we have Even Peel. I don't know if he really has an impact on Star Wars as a whole. He just is like, I know some of these trade routes and like hyperspace lanes, right? And C tier, I'd say low C tier too.
I was gonna say upper C tier. I would like to put him in B because the Citadel arc is a great arc. I think we need C tier characters, to be honest. We have such a big B tier. Next up is Plo Koon. Plo Koon, out of all of the Jedi legacy characters that are on, like the Counselor in the episode 2, that appear for seconds in the films and then get transitions into animation. Plo Koon, because he's Dave Filoni's favorite, gets the most material by far, and he's great. He has some of the best moments that Jedi are given in the Clone Wars outside of our main 3. I think he's absolutely an A tier character.
Yeah, I would say top of A. It's a shame that we didn't get a lot more of him in the later seasons. The line with him surviving with the clones in their escape pod without any air, and they're like, we're clones, sir. We're meant to be expendable, and he says, "Not to me," right? And that shows just how caring of a man he was. Next up, we have General Grievous. He's effective. He kills many Jedi, but I don't know if he grows as a character. I don't know if he fails as a character. He just is a character for me. He is B, but I argue he's not that high for someone who had a fascinating backstory in Legends.
I was even going to say top of C. I think General Grievous is arguably the most disappointing character of the Clone Wars, where almost every character in the 2008 Clone Wars series gets heavily elevated from wherever their last appearance was, whether it was 2003 Clone Wars or the films. General Grievous is the only one who takes a dramatic step down. He doesn't have much character in the 03 Clone Wars show, but at least he is the coolest character by far. But I think what's also really disappointing about General Grievous is that he is still really cool in season 1 of Clone Wars. Lair of Grievous is an absolutely awesome single episode. Then to have him losing to Gungans later in the show, it's like,
He is, I'll say top of C because he still does get some cool kills. I'll give him that.
yeah, and I guess I did forget about his Massacre of the Night Sisters. So, like, those two things, Lair of Grievous, Massacre of the Night Sisters, definitely raise his character towards that level, but then he also loses to the Gungans. Gunji stands alone because he does have an appearance in the Bad Batch. He's also kind of the standout from that group. Gunji's an interesting youngling. There's not too much to his character, but I think he's a bottom of B for me.
Yeah, I mean, cool wooden lightsaber. Cool that he survives. Next up, we have Hard Case. Hard Case is crazy. That's the best way to describe the guy. Like thematically resonant end to him. If you want a clone to go out, yeah, this is a great example of that. So I'd say bottom of B just cause.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think bottom of B. His is also an arc to where, like, when it wraps up, it's a pretty satisfying death for an ancillary clone. Next is Heavy. Heavy only is in 2 episodes of the Clone Wars, but Heavy's appearances are very important for what the show was setting up, with the idea that the clones are more than just droids, right? They have personalities and sacrifice themselves. And Heavy sacrifice is one of the early warning shots of the Clone Wars that this is more than just a kids show. Even if season 1 leans into the kids element a bit more, the younger audience a bit more, Heavy's death really shows that things for adults to really enjoy about the show, and Rookies is kind of that setup episode for what will be the grander journey of the clones throughout the entire show. I don't know if I could say Heavy's an A tier because of only 2 appearances, but he's one of the most impactful upper Bs that you could possibly have.
Yeah, top of B is a great spot for him. When I think about him, when I hear his name, when I think about his death, it takes me back to 2008. Rookies was what made the Clone Wars. That was the best episode for quite a while. Next up, we have Captain Rex, S tier, nothing to be said, incredible. He's about that life. I want to know how he became like that, honestly.
Yeah, he's my favorite clone. He is kind of the face clone of the entire Clone Wars. I love this character. I would say S tier behind Maul. Another clone we have Hauser, who has made an incredible impact on the Bad Batch, and a character that really is more of a symbolic character than anything, one that represents a change. B tier for Hauser.
He is like the last wall of the clones and their morality, and he pushes some people to change. He pushes some people to consider it a rebellion, but lower B. I can't wait for him to hopefully have a bigger role in season 3. Next up, we have Jar Jar Binks. I don't know if I really like him in the Clone Wars. He didn't disappoint me because he's just who he is. Somewhere in C. I don't hate the guy. I think it's surprising that he almost got a little better during the Clone Wars.
Yeah, I would say C. You're not going to find too much Jar Jar slander on this channel. Jar Jar is proof that George Lucas had heavy involvement in this show. A lot of his appearances are George trolling the audience, especially with who he pairs him up with. Like, is it Mace Windu and Yoda? No, it's Mace Windu and Jar Jar. Now we're moving on to the Son. The Son is the most interesting and compelling. His arc with Anakin, when he shows Anakin what he'll become, all of that type of stuff is absolutely incredible, and he leads to the downfall of the ones, all of them dying. He's borderline S for me. He's only in one arc though, so I think he should be A.
I will say he's right behind Plo Koon. Very impactful. An interesting design. Red Lightning too is pretty cool, so I gotta give him that. Next up, we have Jesse. Jesse is one of those clones that he's kind of around there. He's like one of the younger guys, right? That the older guys kind of take a shine to. The thing with Jesse though is that he only really becomes like a player in season 7, I'd say. Right before that, he's here and there, some quips and all that. Tragic though, like for someone who got to live to the end of the war, basically. Maybe like a bottom of B, top of C character.
Yeah, Jesse's a tough one because he's one of those ones that I remember really well throughout the Clone Wars for sure. Yeah, he doesn't have the arc or the emotional stakes of somebody like Dogma. Yeah, I could see him as top of C. I think we need some C tier characters. Now we're moving on to Kiadi-Mundi. Kiadi-Mundi doesn't have too much to do in the Clone Wars, although the second battle, Geonosis, is one of my favorite arcs. I'd say B tier for Kiadi-Mundi. He does better than a lot of the Jedi we have in C tier.
He is another early season Jedi that I wish we got to see more of at the end. Yeah, mid to low B for me. Next up, we have Kit Fisto. Like he's super happy, super smiley. I just wish he had more time. He's just a fun character, and he just doesn't get much else. So top of C for me, bottom of B actually.
I'm okay with bottom of B. He's one of my favorites of the Jedi. Like, his appearances are stronger, maybe right around that Kiadi-Mundi level. Next up is Kix. Kind of like Jesse on that same level. He's in a lot of episodes, but mostly in the background. I'd say he's top of C, bottom of B. His role in kind of the Order 66 stuff is a little more interesting.
He's a medic. That's about it. C tier. Next up, we have Princely Char. Fascinating character. I really like what they do with the Mon Calamari on Dak and all that. It's just having him like be this young prince forced to grow up, deal with the separatists, trying to like shape this relatively peaceful world before they become the masterminds of the rebellion. Yeah, somewhere mid B.
I agree, mid B. Underrated arc of the Clone Wars for sure. Next is Luminar Unduli, another character who also starts out really strong at the beginning of Clone Wars, doesn't really have much in the second half of Clone Wars, but her appearances are a bit elevated, especially because she does have kind of a bit of a connection to Ahsoka, as well as her connection to Barriss, which then plays into her connection with Ahsoka, somewhere in mid B as well.
Example of a dogmatic Jedi who still sticks to that mostly, but is open to learning, especially with her experiences with Anakin and Ahsoka. But we just don't see like more of her. We don't see her and Barriss like kind of almost like diverging, which would have been incredible. Next up, we have Lux Bonteri, kind of there as like a yeah, I like Ahsoka. Ahsoka kind of likes me sort of character, but character with a lot of potential. C tier character. I'd say bottom of B.
I was gonna say top of B because I think Lux brings out a whole nother side of Ahsoka that really proves to her like there's more beyond just the Republic and the Jedi. It's like there's two sides to the war. Thematically, it's still really rich. And Lux is a character that you see like Ahsoka continue to evolve and grow. I think he's a really cool character and something that could transform into something really, really special. Next, we move on to Mace Windu. Mace Windu is a tough one because he's Mace Windu. We already had a lot of story for him in the prequels. And so when you transition over into the Clone Wars, I was expecting a bit more than the appearances we get from him. As a character, he has enough story to be considered a B tier, but I would say he's a little disappointing. I would probably pop him in C, even though he has limited appearances in the O3 Clone Wars. Scenes where he's punching super battle droids or when he crushes General Grievous's lungs, those are cool. Those really stand out. It really elevates him as this unique Vapod swordsman. But I don't know if there's anything in the 2008 Clone Wars that makes him stand out.
I'd argue he's wasted. Dark Disciples is the closest that we get to the Mace Windu, where the dogma's winning over, the war is being lost. Okay, next up we have Mama the Hutt. F tier?
Yeah, Mama the Hutt is one of the worst names in Star Wars for sure. Maybe could be cool in Guillermo del Toro's project for Jabba the Hutt if we ever get to see that get off the ground. But moving on to somebody who is definitely an awesome character, it's Colonel Meeber Gaskin. Colonel Meeber Gaskin is the leader of D Squad. I'd say bottom of B.
Yeah, I'd say bottom of B. He brings out Gregor, makes him realize he is that soldier, his value. Next up, we have Mina Bonteri. She's cool. She's like Padme's counterpart for the Separatists on their political arena. Minor character. I like what she's used as, though, so I'll say like bottom of B.
Yeah, I think the same way. It's like she's the foil, just like Lux is kind of a foil for Ahsoka. She's a foil for Padme, and it works in the messaging. Not the best episodes, but a decent character and kind of somebody who is a forebearer to that bridge between hardcore loyalist Republic senators and the rebellion. Next is Mirage Sintel, the main villain of the Zygerian arc, is one that is pretty honestly disturbing and kind of devastating. It plays a lot into Anakin's psyche, which I like, and this character is very kind of twisted. I think she is a serviceable, good villain and one that definitely plays onto a strong facet of Anakin's identity that we don't usually explore.
She's a slaver queen, so that already makes her a very negative character. Yeah, somewhere at the bottom of B, top of C. Next up, we have Mirala Eval. He is very annoying, I will say. I think he's bottom of B, top of C.
Yeah, he's slimy, and I think that could work for like his overall character, but he is one that is kind of a failure. Let's say C tier. Next is Nala Se. Nala Se plays a big role in the end of the Clone Wars, but also in the Bad Batch. And Nala Se, she's effective in her kind of mix between kind of being a little despicable as well as being a bit loyal and empathic for the clones.
She cares for Omega, but like as an asset, but also enough to like make sure that like Cad Bane doesn't succeed, right? Middle B. She's cool. I like Kaminoans. Next up, we have Newt Gunray. Newt Gunray is just the wimp, always complaining. Nothing ever goes right. I'd say top of C.
I'd say C as well. I think middle to bottom of C. Next is Nuvo Vindi, the main character, or the main villain, I should say, of the Blue Shadow Virus arc. This character is just absolutely cringy. It's disturbing, cringy. I do not like this character at all. I'd put him in F.
F, but maybe D. I'd say at least like the Blue Shadow Virus and the haunts of like the lab and all that are pretty cool.
The German accent really, really just kills me.
Yeah, I'm fine either way. Which is Obi-Wan Kenobi, S tier. I like that Obi-Wan, even though he doesn't intend to, he is one of the biggest people to hurt Anakin. He's got some great banter. Everyone flirts with him. His stuff with Maul is also great, so yeah, easy S.
Yeah, Obi-Wan gets a ton of development, and he does have his occasional standalone arcs. He is kind of at Anakin's side, so there's no way I can argue for him to be ahead of Anakin in this show. The Mandalore stuff, the entire Maul arc is basically an Obi-Wan arc as well. Satine edition is great. So even though he doesn't feel like he gets as big of a push as somebody like Anakin in the show, he is probably out of all the legacy characters, given the second meatiest amount of stuff. I'm okay putting him behind Maul because of how much the Clone Wars transformed Maul. And then we have Anaconda Farr. Anaconda Farr is a senator who has a pretty tragic story, and honestly, his connection with Padme has a bit of an emotional weight, kind of a father figure slash mentor figure for her, and someone who, when he does die, it does leave a big impact. The senator storylines are always some of the more boring ones, but Anaconda Farr as a character, as kind of a empathic senator, one who really feels for his people, but also is just a compassionate friend, I think raises him. I'd say top towards the upper part of B.
He is up there for me because he is fighting for his people. He does choose the Confederacy because of that. He's got to save them and protect them. Maybe ahead of Cham? Next up, we have the single most important character from the Clone Wars. It's Ahsoka. Absolutely, right? And Ahsoka's distrust of the Jedi and their dogma and all that is quite justified. Fantastic arcs, how she survives through Anakin's teachings is further established in the Ahsoka show. I would say she's ahead of Maul for me.
I agree. I think she's the second best character in all of the Clone Wars, but a lot of her character and a lot of her arc is to support and help change Anakin. So I still think Anakin is the top dog here when we talk about Clone Wars characters. But Ahsoka, for original Clone Wars characters, is the best. Now we have the slimy Senator Orn Free Ta, who again plays a good role as his own disgusting type of senator villain. I would say C tier.
Yeah, he's a great negative foil to Cham. Just a little bit of a disgusting character, but intentional. Next up, we have Padme. Padme is a very underrated character in the Clone Wars. She doesn't get a lot as her own individual, I'd argue, at the end of the Clone Wars. It becomes like her story just becomes more personal as the war goes on, which ties into her characterization in Revenge of the Sith. Like a top would be.
I was gonna say A because I do think the early part of the Clone Wars has a lot of Padme's story, and overall, you do kind of get that transformation from her, or from staunch loyalist, anti-clone army senator in Attack of the Clones to starting to question things in Revenge of the Sith. I agree. Her second half of the Clone Wars, especially when you change animation styles, there wasn't as much emphasis put on her as it was in the beginning of the show. I could say she's the very top of B, but I would argue for bottom of A. Next is Fee. She's an interesting, kind of funny character, but there's not too much to her for me. I would say C tier as well.
Yeah, I'd say top of C, maybe bottom of B, like the very bottom of B. I like her. She's quippy, she's snappy, she's hilarious to me. Her little beginning of the romance with Tech, I hope we get to see some of that fallout too. I think she'll be a great character if she like becomes further hardened and that mask of like joyousness fully slips. Next up, we have Quinlan Voss. I will count Dark Disciple because so much of his characterization, literally an 8 episode arc, turned into a book that could have been incredible to see on screen. But even with that, it's like we're missing like the chunks of like why he would turn like that. I want to see a little bit more of those hints at like his struggles, his pains. Middle B.
If we're including the book, I would absolutely say A. Like, I feel like Ventress is already an S tier character without the book. Quinlan, it just dramatically changes him so much from his one appearance to like being an incredibly tragic character. His one appearance is very impactful, but I'd say some maybe right ahead of Dogma. Next is R2D2. R2, just like 3PO, gets a lot of appearances in this show, probably a little bit more because he's part of D Squad and he appears a lot with Anakin and Ahsoka. A tier for sure.
I feel like we got so much more like true C3PO led episodes sometimes than R2. R2 is always feels like he's the one who's actually the man of action. Next up, we have R3S6. No, I'm a hater, absolutely a hater. But also, R3 wasn't even that effective. Played the role right, bottom of C.
D. R3 is the worst. This is Rafa Martez. I'm not a big fan of the Martez sisters arc. They're just kind of annoying. Maybe Rafa I could put in D and Trace in F.
I will say top D. I think Rafa has some decent reasons for her actions. Next up, we have Vice Admiral Rampart. Yeah, I really liked him. It's shocking to me that he's just kind of thrown out the picture. He's a monster, all right? He's a policy maker. He brings in chain codes. He's very important. If he doesn't come back in season 3, he's going to be like removed from the history books, which would be even more tragic for his character. Top of B, low A.
I would say that as well. I think he was on the A trajectory until season 2, and it's like we just take him out halfway through and he never comes back. He was an absolutely menacing character. Next, we have Riff Tampson, the main villain of the the arc with Lee Char and the Mon Calamari. Riff is a cool design. I do like the kind of shark face, even if it is like very, very much so just animal head on humanoid body. Uh, cool villain. Not too much else to him. I'm okay with C.
Yeah, I mean, he's a shark. Next up, we have Stinky, or more formally known as Rana the Hutt, Jabba's son. Don't know why this is a character created. I'll say F tier.
I was gonna say D, but I'm okay with top of F. Poor Rada. He just never shows back up. Next is Dr. Royce Hemlock, a character who, like, honestly, I already kind of want to drop an A. I think he's gonna absolutely be a terrifying villain once season 3 of Bad Batch comes out. I don't know if we can do that yet because we haven't really seen much from him, but he's so scary. Like as a horrifying doctor, mad scientist. I think Royce Hemlock's going to be super memorable throughout the entirety of season 3.
I would honestly put him behind Rampart. I really liked his depiction. Next up, we have Mother Talzin, who is an A character for me. I love just the magicness of all that. Her look is fantastic. Her, like, being in alliance with Palpatine from the start, giving him Maul.
Absolutely agree. I'd put her at the very top of A. Mother Talzin is absolutely so scary and somebody with a huge history, a very powerful character, really, really cool design, great voice. I love the Night Sisters arcs, but Mother Talzin is especially one of the reasons why. Next, we have Rush Clovis. Rush Clovis is kind of the annoying senator who hits on Padme a lot. I would say C tier. He's not a character that you particularly like.
Yeah, I want to know what he was like when he was younger, if he was just more of like this, or if he had genuinely had a heart at some point. I'm fine with somewhere in C. Next up, we have Saw Gerrera. Fantastic character, but I like that about Saw. I like that people are going to start disliking him already from the Bad Batch. It's top of B.
I was even going to say bottom of A because I think for me he was a top of B with Clone Wars, and I think the Bad Batch has already set him on a path to be a really integral part of that story, and I think by the end of it he could very well be a solid A. Next to Stila Guerrera. Stila Guerrera does honestly have a bit more of an impactful appearance in the Onderon arc in the Clone Wars. She serves as kind of a dual part to Saw Gerrera, and when he loses that part, that's when he kind of flies off the handle. I'd say she's a middle to top B as well.
Maybe just behind where Saw is. She is that hope. Next up, we have Sugi. Not a great character for me. I like that she has some morals. I just don't care about her. Bottom of B, top of C.
Yeah, I'll go with top of C because of lack of appearances, but I do appreciate her one. Next, we have Talia, one of the only main standout kind of face Night Sisters besides Ventress and, of course, Talzin. Very powerful. Top of C, bottom of B. She doesn't have too much to her.
Yeah, I mean, she dies as one of the Night Sisters, so that really removes any chance of like really growing with her around Mina Gunji. Next up, we have the very old, but you know, not who he appears, Jedi Master Tara Sinube, but he does show Ahsoka like there are different ways to be a Jedi. He is an incredible investigator. Just for uniqueness alone, I'd put him solidly like upper B.
I would too. I think he has a really great singular one-off episode. Next we have, I just lumped all together the kids from the Gathering arc from Ilum. They really do work as a team. They have multifaceted personalities of kind of one whole character. But I would put them in B above like a Bosk.
Yeah, I would put them in somewhere lower B because I do think, as great as Gunji is, there's potential for all of them. Curious if to see if any of them live alongside Gunji in this era, or if some of them are killed off. Next up, we have Tyre. He's a great example of like Yoda showing that no, like in the Force, you guys are all different, right? He is one of those examples, but there's not much else to him. We never see him again. See.
Yeah, I'm okay with top of C. He is one of those first clones that really gives you personality. Next, we have Trace Martez. Trace Martez. Trace is super annoying. I gotta say that. If Rafa is kind of like overwhelmed with her ambition to become a criminal mastermind, Trace just kind of makes dumb decisions. She's the one that gets them pretty much in all the bad situations. Even if Rafa initiates it, she's the one that constantly is failing. I would like to put her in F.
I'll say F. I don't want to hate on her character. I just don't see her reasons for like dumping the spice in the middle of hyperspace and all that. Like next up we have Viscus, kind of forgettable. I know he helps Asajj with her challenges that she has to do to become Dathomiri once more and all that. I don't know. I don't really care about him. He's like a C or a D to me.
I'd say C. I remember his few scenes, but it's not that impactful for the show overall. Next is Whack 47. Whack 47 is a brilliant part of D Squad. Very funny. I want to say B. He's a funny character. I actually enjoy Wax's sense of humor.
Yeah, I forgot how much I did enjoy it because he showed up again in Dark Droids. Next up, we have Yaddle. I hope we get more. We just really got the end of that character. I'd say like a B.
Absolutely great appearance for Yaddle. I wish there was more because I'd love to drop her an A. Next, Commander Wolf. A cool clone, cool design. Outside of that, though, he doesn't have too much story. He's like very iconic, and I think more iconic than actually filled with story. I would say very bottom of B or somewhere top of C.
Some of his more impactful scenes in the Clone Wars are him outside of his armor. I don't know. I don't care too much about him in Clone Wars. Next up, we have Yoda. I will say he's an A character. I think he's got some excellent development. His Force journey is wonderful. It's more towards the end of the Clone Wars. He really becomes someone.
Yeah, I agree. I think the first episode of the Clone Wars, he's there, and what was for a long time the last episodes of the Clone Wars, he's there. He's got some really significant moments, even if they're more few and far between. But I do absolutely love his appearances, and the last arc of season 6 is one of the best arcs in the Clone Wars. Next up, we have Waxer. Waxer is the more interesting of Waxer and Boyle. Dies in Umbara, befriends the young little Twi'lek. Honestly, Waxer was one of the top tier clones for a while with his death, but also just kind of you fall off. Like he's not really in season 3 very much. So I would say he's still a B tier as much as I'd like to raise him higher. I think he is more towards middle of B.
Yeah, a really great early era clone. Being killed by friendly fire is such a tragic way to go, especially with his connection to Numa. I just wish we had like maybe one more appearance from him. He just feels shortchanged at some point. So yeah, middle of B.
And that is gonna do it for our Clone Wars character and Tales of the Jedi and Bad Batch character tier list. Thank you so much for watching this video. Here is a last little run through of all of the tiers so that you can see them. This was a long one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it as the second part of our Rebels Ahsoka themed animation power hour tier list. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for the next video here coming on the channel. We will have a review of Crimson Climb up soon. Live streams every single week, including one every Monday focused on our live Q&A. Ask us anything you want. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.